3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon. Welcome everyone. So glad that wasn't actually okay.
I saw Brandon. I may be dumb, but I'm not stupid.
And just after that, we have some refreshments for you all. I'm going to stick around for that as well. I'm really pleased with we choose an Icat theme every year. And this year our theme is Amplifying and Unplugging the Future and Arts and Voices of Unplugged. And it's been a fun thing to play with as we created Icat Creativity Innovation Day and curated it this year. And so I'm really tickled to have our panelists here today for this panel discussion. Just kind of explore that and explore it in terms of their work. So I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, who is the director of the Center for Educational Networks and Impacts, Dr. Elizabeth Daniel.
Yay!
Thanks.
My hands are sweaty, just so you know.
It's the end of the day, almost. And then refreshments. The best part about the end of the day. Okay. I'm Lisa, and it's nice to see all of y'all out there. I'm going to briefly introduce our panel guests and then let you all say something about yourselves so that we learn even more. But we do have categories for each of them that are meant to be transgressed today in just a moment. So I have next to me Meredith Drum, who we've put you in the category of arts. And Meredith did an Icat Day presentation called Monuments Dissected, and you might have also seen her a couple of weeks ago at the Playdate. Mm-hmm. Layers and layers and layers of art. Next, we have Andrea Baldwin, and we have Andrea as voices. And Andrea is responsible for many things. One thing that she's done this semester, I think this semester, yes, February, Black History Month, projection mapping, very timely because it was February Black History Month, but also because it was on the Coliseum during basketball season. So lots of people saw it, right? That's good. And then Tom Martin, who is representing the future of work, and he has submitted a center proposal on the future of work, and I've already forgotten. Yeah. So you'll follow up on that, yes. Okay? All right, so I'll hand it over to them. And please introduce yourselves to us and let us know a little bit about your work as transdisciplinary, how it fits. And now I'm just going to kind of say a bunch of things, but basically transdisciplinary, how it fits into Icat, and what are the challenges and really great rewards of being transdisciplinary. Meredith.
Does anybody else want to go first?
You can toss it.
Yeah, I'm not catching.
Andrea?
You go.
Okay. I don't like going first. Okay.
Sorry.
Anyways, I'm Meredith Drum from the School of Visual Arts. So I'm very happy to be under arts since that's the most comfortable area for me. Assistant professor. The Icat Grant, I got 2 Icat Grants last year, which have helped me make this monuments project. One grant is helping me make an augmented reality mobile media app on considering monuments, Confederate and colonial monuments in the U.S., mostly in the Southeast. And the other grant allowed me, with some colleagues, to do a performance and installation in the Cube, which happened last weekend. And we were able to commission pieces of music from 2 really amazing composers, Grisha Coleman and Marcus Norris. Both are internationally well-known composers, artists of color, and their music was just incredible. So it's on the website for if anybody wants to hear it. And I'm going to pass the mic, and we'll come back around to what that's about. So.
Awesome. So I'm Andrea Baldwin, and I guess I can call myself an associate professor now.
Yay!
It is not official, so I have to wait for the Board of Visitors to sign off, but I just got tenure. So I'm an associate professor of soon-to-be religion and culture, starting in the fall, and I am so thrilled to be part of the Icat team as a senior Icat fellow. The first time I started with Icat, it was part of the Reimagine and Diversity team with my husband and Quentin Baldwin and Raphael Patrick. And that was such a great experience that I came back again and applied for a grant for the posture portraits, and we got a mini seed grant, and we did an installation in the Cube. Time does not make sense anymore. I think it was last fall. Yes, in the fall. And this project was with my colleagues from my former institution, Connecticut College, and I can talk a little bit more about that project, but it's about universities and colleges in between the 1920s and late 1960s. Part of their orientation was to make students take nude and semi-nude photos. And so we wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit. And I had the great fortune to be involved in the Experience Black Love Illuminated with David, who approached Robin Scully and myself, who we do the Black Love exhibit in the Perspective Gallery every year. And David just approached us, and we thought it was fantastic. And so we did that, and it was just amazing. So yeah, those are kind of the projects that we're working on, and something else in the pipeline that I can also talk about too.
So I'm Tom Martin. I'm Deputy Director of Icat. I don't have any seed grants or mini seed grants, but I help hand them out. So I help Ben curate the projects that we award. One of the things I'm working on for Icat, as Lisa mentioned, is we're putting together a center for future workplaces and processes that's being considered by the university right now. The way I got into Icat was, so in grad school, so I'm a professor in electrical and computer engineering. I'm on long-term loan to Icat. But in grad school, my degree is in ECE, but I didn't sit in ECE. I sat in an engineering design research center where I shared an office with a couple of industrial designers. I have mechanical engineers down the hallway and architects. So I've been trying to recreate, I was looking for that same sort of situation here at VT. There was a lot of things that Lisa and I had been doing under the radar and against the wishes of our department heads and things for many years. And suddenly Icat came along and we could do it and get credit for it. It was valued for doing, so.
Yay. Okay. Great start. Thanks for cleaning up after me with all those details. All right, so now we're going to talk about transdisciplinarity, the challenge that we're always immersing ourselves in here at Icat, and how the projects that y'all each have are examples of transdisciplinarity, and also going into a little bit the challenges and maybe ways that you've addressed the challenges, or it's an ongoing kind of thing, which is probably the answer, but just a little bit of deeper insight into what it's like to be in a transdisciplinary project. And I won't put you on the spot this time. Does anyone want to go first?
I could go first.
Okay.
So I am a transdisciplinary scholar. So people ask me all the time, like, are you social sciences or are you humanities? And I'm like, I don't know. And so I usually tell them I'm indisciplined and without discipline. And so for me, what that means is that I'm not like, I don't try to put myself in a box. So my degrees, I have a law degree, don't hold that against me. And I have a Ph.D. in gender and development studies, and so that doesn't fit in any particular thing. It's not sociology, it's not political science, it's not all those things. And so I was trained as a transdisciplinary scholar, and so I pull from all of these places. But the one thing I've never really pulled from was like arts and technology. And so this was really, really new to me. But I was just like, well, hey, this is the project, the Posture Portraits project specifically was when I was at Connecticut College, Heidi, who is one of the people on the project, she's a dancer, and James, he's a computer scientist. And so when I got there, Heidi was she was assigned to me as a mentor, and our first meeting, she started talking about this. Did you know that they used to take nude pictures of students, like freshman students coming in to at all these colleges and universities? And I was like, really? And so we were just talking about it and how this was really, really awful, right? And that you were doing it to particularly, I mean, they did it to men too, but we were at a women's college at that point, and we were like, they did it to women, and then we found out that it was part of a eugenics program, like it was connected to the eugenics, and you know, but they're measuring these women's bodies. Men are the people who are taking the pictures, and so we started, like, our minds started, you know, rolling over in our minds, like, so what does it mean to be a student coming into a university or a college in your first year, like never stepped foot in a college before, and then you're told that in order to be enrolled in this college as part of orientation, you have to basically strip nude and have your picture taken, and the people who are taking the pictures are men. And how icky that felt. And so when we talk, for instance, about voices and those women, we interviewed some of the women, and they were already in like their 80s, late 70s, 80s, some in their 90s. And we interviewed them. You know, they were saying some things like, you know, we didn't have a choice. Like, we were of that generation where you just do it. We, you know, we wanted an education. All of these things. And these are women who were fairly privileged, like middle-class women, mostly white women. But even as middle-class white women, there was this practice that was based on this patriarchal, cis heterosexual, eugenics type science, this faux science, which took away their voices, took away their ability to have some type of agency over their bodies. And so we wanted to design a project which did the opposite, but which also engage technology in terms of the photographs. And how do we think about using photographs, using technology, but also using, how do we also speak back to science in a way that shows that this scientific method of eugenics and measuring women's bodies, how do we deconstruct that? And we felt like we could deconstruct that through art. And so we started with dance, and then we went on to performance in terms of having students give their own experiences of a time where they felt like they didn't have agency over their bodies. And it just morphed from there. And we felt like our feedback from the performers and from the people who were in the audience was that this was such a great, seamless way to integrate all of these fields, the technology, the art, the indisciplined and without discipline. And it just felt really good to do that. Yeah, so I'll stop there.
Thanks, Andrea, that's fascinating. It sounds, I mean, the first thing I think about is the idea of sort of retaking agency via the medium, yes, in a way. I mean, you mentioned photography right away, but then merging all of these different kinds of media, different ways of being and different ways of expression. Yeah. And so something that was a challenge before, yeah, came together and was really powerful. Yeah. Thanks for that. Not to interpret, but it just evoked that in my mind. It's really neat. And we'll get soon to amplifying, so I want to kind of, tear apart what amplifying is and unplugging, and so that's yet to come. Are you volunteering to go next?
I can, but what's the question? No, what's the question?
Voluntold. Oh, the question. The question was, you're transdisciplinary, Transdisciplinarian, and what are the benefits, challenges? How have you addressed that and in the past, and how are you addressing it now?
Okay, so I didn't say this earlier, but so my area, in terms of ECE, my area of research is wearable computing and electronic textiles. So back in the 90s, we started building these wearable computers. First wearable I built weighed 8 pounds, and 6 pounds of that was batteries. And the reason I was working with the industrial designers is, if you're gonna wear this thing around for an 8-hour shift, it needs to fit comfortably, and you need to be able to get through the 8-hour shift without it killing you. And so you know, even though I'm trained as an engineer, I always viewed myself as somebody who was a problem solver writ large. And in a lot of the work that I did with Lisa in my early days at Virginia Tech was actually studying how these interdisciplinary teams come together and how they work together. And one of the big things we found is really about language and the words that people use. And so for many years, I was Lisa's guinea pig. So I taught a class with Ed Dorsett from Industrial Design and Eloise Coupé from Marketing. And we had seniors from engineering, marketing, and industrial design working together on product development. And one of the word I like to pick on is the word model. You can see these conversations of students where they're using the same word, they think they're saying the same thing. But you say model to the engineer and he thinks mathematical model of how this thing operates. You say model to the business student and they think in business model, how do I monetize this thing? And you say model to the industrial design student and they're thinking, you know, foam core or something like that, some sort of physical model. So they're all three using the same word and they're all three talking about something that's totally different. So a big part of getting these transdisciplinary teams to work together is getting them to be able to communicate and value the perspectives of the other members of the team. Ed Dorsett and I used to debate about the word design. So I had all these books in my office that said design on them, and Ed's like, you don't do design. And one of the things I realized through that was, even though we're using the same words, we don't actually have to settle on one definition. We just have to figure out what all the definitions are and what's the definition that we're using at the moment. And then keep in mind that you can have these different definitions and to understand the context. I don't think that answered your question, but that's a stab at it.
Yeah, that's great. And I've always loved that idea of valuing other perspectives. And when I'm in the classroom, if we can get students to think from a perspective other than their own, and then to actually value other perspectives, that's huge.
And I think, one big part of it for me was having that student, giving the student an opportunity to find out something about themselves that they wouldn't have found out otherwise. And I have a couple examples of students from that class, so you could see them 3 or 4 weeks in where they go, oh wait, I didn't know that I could do this. This is kind of cool. I'm going to go off and do this thing. And so I think that's particularly at the university and at the undergraduate level, that's a really valuable piece of it for me.
Yeah. Thanks. Meredith?
So I'm going to try to be brief. I think I'm going to address both like art and technology, and then art and political science, art and sociology. But in terms of art and technology, I teach creative technologies in the School of Visual Arts, and sometimes it's a little bit of a difficult union. You know, there's sometimes I think the art and technology people tend to get more funding sometimes than the studio art, and so sometimes there's like a little bit of some trouble there. And then also, I think we deal with different things with our students, because there's sort of an expectation that we're teaching them something that can be economically profitable for them, right? And that's not always the perception of studio art. So there's sometimes like a tension in between those areas within, even just within our School of Art. And I don't know, that's been sort of interesting. And the way I got into, I was very comfortable just as an artist years ago in New York City, but I was always technical, and I was a video person, and so I worked as a videographer in museums. And I was always so surprised that I would be the only woman videographer. This was in the mid-2000s. I was like, what's going on? All the curators were women, and then all the tech people were men. And I was just like, and sometimes the tech men would treat me a little strange, like, this is gaffer's tape or something. I was like, I know what gaffer's tape is, But so I was determined. I was like, I'm going to learn everything I can about computers. So anyways, that's how I got into it. But then I'm going to jump forward to last week in terms of the intersection of art and political science, or art and sociology. I had some students in the installation who were drawing. I asked them to draw alternatives to Confederate and colonial monuments, like what's going to replace them. And one student, I was surprised that she volunteered, because she had always in my classes resisted anything that was political in art. She was an animation student, and she always was insisting that her animations were purely fantastical and imaginary. And so I was surprised she was one of the ones that volunteered, and I don't think she'll mind if I tell the story. I'm not going to say her name, but she stayed with me all 3 days, and she was like, every day she opened up a little bit more and talking about the why she wanted to come. And finally she explained that she grew up in a part of Virginia where she said she would just count the number of Confederate flags, when she would see them. And she's a young white woman. And she said, my sister and I had to radicalize or change our dad's mind. And she said that we had to explain to him why these Confederate flags, because I think he didn't see the problem with them, were harmful and painful to other people in the community. And that he finally was like, oh, and like decided not to use that imagery anymore. I was like, wow, I don't know why in the classroom, because I always show them like politically involved, socially involved animations, I don't know why she had been resistant, and that was, I never bugged her about that, but something about like being out of the classroom and being in this different situation that, Icat allowed me, which I'm really thankful for, allowed that student to open up to the, to the political science aspect or the sociology or the, critical studies part of her experience here, so.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a thought that's almost there, but not quite. We were in a meeting earlier today. This is when things get fuzzy. And someone was talking about Edison and why Edison was so brilliant and was so successful, rather, where other brilliant people weren't necessarily. And it was because, one, he got out of the lab, and second, he was a great salesman. And there's something about getting out of the classroom or out of the normal sort of environment and being able to, and here comes the segue, amplify what you want to amplify. So let's talk about amplifying and unplugging. So, and we can think about different meanings. Unplugging could just mean acoustic. So somebody like Kurt Cobain has a great, acoustic unplugged set. Love it. Really different, but interpretation of kind of the same thing. Unplugged could be, how much are we valuing technology? Is technology always the thing that needs to be valued the most? And then unplugged could just be like, pull the plug. Enough of this, let's stop. So I'm getting like knitted brow from you. But anyway, don't look at your audience. And then amplify, again, the different media, and then the different layers of voices. So volunteer for someone to rejoin. Amplify.
Yeah, I'll be brave. Again, I'll try to be short, even though I love to talk. So, I think sometimes I would be like, my immediate reaction to someone who flies a Confederate flag, who is against taking down the Confederate monuments, would be like wanting to unplug them, right? But I think that's where it can be really, that's like the wrong response, I think, and like one of the people that I interviewed for this project is a really lovely black artist and preacher in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and one of his stories was that he became friends with another preacher, a white preacher who preached in a church for truck drivers. And this other preacher, Charlie was the guy I was interviewing, the black artist. This other preacher loved Charlie and said, please come to my church, So Charlie went, and he said this guy's church was full of black and white and Hispanic people because it was truck drivers, it was like working class. But there was a huge Confederate flag behind the band, and he was just like shocked, and at first he was just like, he was not going to ever come back or maybe not engage this guy again. But, the guy was like, what's wrong, and so he and Charlie talked for a long time, and the guy took the flag down, and, again, changed his mind, So I think if there's that ability to maybe cross those divides, maybe that's important instead of, that's a really, that's like my own take on what you said, but.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. Everyone's different take. Next.
Am I talking about amplify or unplug? Either one. So I think I'll talk about unplug for a little bit. So I'm this wearable computing guy, but if you notice, like, I'm not wearing like a smartwatch or anything like that. And a lot of the folks I went to grad school with like wore wearables all day long. And for me, it was always about, it just didn't fit into my day, you know, it didn't fit into my life. Actually, I broke things a lot. And so a big part for me is if you're going to have the technology there, and there's a transdisciplinary aspect of this of how do you get it to fit into your life without you noticing it all the time. It's and I guess this is in some ways an amplification. So in what ways can you bring things into your life that amplify your ability to do the things that you want to do and don't interfere with?
Just
I
an
see
example. I did that on purpose.
You did that on purpose? Yeah. Okay. And as I was saying that, I was like, yeah, and I have this phone in my pocket that's just way too big for the pocket that it's in and things. So, sorry, I don't know where I'm going with this. But again, since I'm the engineer on the panel, thinking about the technology, how do you get that to fit into people's lives to where they can focus on their lives and not on the technology? How can you make the technology adapt to what they want to do and not make them adapt to it? Has been a big piece of it for me. And having these perspectives from around the university is, I think, a key thing that we have to do to make that work.
Mm-hmm. So when I think about amplify and unplug, I think about privilege. I think about that to do either comes with a measure of privilege. And so when I think about amplify, for instance, I think about how I am the daughter of a maid who cleans hotel rooms in Barbados and the father of a fisherman. How I'm the first person to go to college, the first person to get a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a Ph.D. I think about how there are so many black women, as a black feminist, how there are so many black women who are smart, smarter than me, who are capable, much more capable than me, and that they don't have a chance to sit on a panel like this. And that I, as a black woman, the responsibility that I, as a black woman, have to amplify, but also taking that with a grain of salt, because while black women are relatively new to the academy, in terms of this was not a space that was built for us. While we are relatively new to the academy, there is a responsibility not only to amplify the voices of marginalized and minoritized people, but also to keep certain things private. And so there's a responsibility that comes with that. And so there's a privilege that I hold, and with that privilege comes responsibility. And then also the privilege to be able to unplug, because there are people from my communities who don't have that privilege, right? There are people from my communities who work all of the time and they can't not work. And when I say my communities, I'm not only talking about black people, I'm talking about intersectional. Like, there are people who are immigrants like I am, people who, you know, I fell in love with this guy as a person from another country and got a green card and became a citizen. And that is like what makes me more deserving of American citizenship than someone who is running from persecution, for instance. So when I think about unplugging and when I think about amplifying, these are the communities I'm thinking about. Like, what gives me the privilege to sit here and speak about these communities versus someone else who might be much more able and much more well-versed to talk about these communities and to amplify those voices. And there's a great theorist who's called Gayatri Spivak, and she talks about can the subaltern speak. And so also understanding that sometimes in amplifying, I have to know, like, what language am I speaking? So even as I'm talking to this academic world, I have to be very careful that the work I'm doing here to amplify those voices, when those voices or when those people hear me talking and advocating, that they're in agreement with what I'm saying, and that I'm not amplifying just because I feel it sounds good. You know, that I'm talking because these are the things that these communities deserve to be heard about them. And so those are the things that come to my mind when I think about the work that I do that is transdisciplinary, that includes the work I do with Icat. how do I amplify? What is my responsibility in amplifying? What are some of the things that should remain silent or should remain soft? And when we're thinking about unplugging, we need to think about those who don't have the privilege to unplug.
Wow. Thank you. Don't know exactly where to go next, but one thing I was thinking of, is I kind of said all these things that unplugging can be, and amplifying, I like the way you were talking about something that's louder or softer. It could amplifying be something that's heard more often, more frequently? How do we, and any ideas about how we do that work? And I feel immense discomfort also with speaking for other people a lot, and so I'm always looking for, like, how do you make the space for someone to speak but not endanger them, for example? Yeah. And how can we do that at Icat, and how can we use transdisciplinarity to also do that? And I think we've talked a little bit about different modes, different media, and that might be some food for thought. We have 4:15 or 4:30. Okay. It's time to wrap. I hope that was somewhat meaningful, that last thing I said. Thank you so much, panelists, Meredith Drum, Andrea Baldwin, and Tom Martin. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you. That was short and sweet.
Yeah.
That was fun.